Hello and welcome to Tuesday Night Tuesday, a new podcast dealing with movies, TV and video games with bonus episodes focused on wrestling. I'm your host, DeffyBoy66, aka in Austin, and on this episode we're going to be looking at Lanterns, episodes 1 and 2, and Insidious, and that's coming up right now.
The latest Insidious movie, Insidious Out the Further. This movie continues the Insidious franchise, which came back, or never even went away, depending on how you articulate it, with movies starring Patrick Wilson, and directed by Patrick Wilson a couple of years ago, which was reasonably good, focusing on his kid. His son from the first movie is now grown up, and they've got to close the book on the Insidious further forever, and defeat the red-faced man who's definitely not Darth Maul. So this is a sequel to that movie, which apparently that movie took place in 2019. I don't remember that in the slightest, but I don't remember much from it other than it being slightly watchable. No, this movie focuses a few weeks later on a different character, Gemma, a dentist. So we do get a lot of dental themed horror, which is great. I always like horror which makes me feel cringy, and going to the dentist definitely makes me cringe. So this was quite effective in that regard. It's very violent. A few good dental gags. It starts slow. It really does start very slow, which is kind of a shame, but also I think I'm one of those people, I prefer movies start slow and builds to a good, satisfying ending, rather than start really manically and then slow down completely. The idea of sort of like, you got to put your best stuff in the first 5 minutes, I disagree with. I think you have to go more steady and make compelling narrative the whole way through, that rises and rises and rises. That's my personal stance, and I think this movie does a good job of that. Although I do have to admit, the opening act did almost put me to sleep a bit, because again, what it does is it has the prologue of the character's tragic backstory, and I'm very much someone who prefers learning that as it goes ahead, as the movie goes forward, learning bits and pieces. If we learn all up front, it's a case of like, oh, we know a thing about characters, so we're not learning anything. Although in this movie we do learn bits and pieces about certain things, adding a bit more context, which is cool. You know, I don't mind that, but I hate that, like, this is what it is, sort of prologue to the movie. It's like, the movie should just start, and then we go on from there. Although I know the opposite argument would be, especially in case of this movie, if the movie just starts, it would be with a seemingly happy family, and then we find out more about, instead of like a horror scene. But again, I would counter-argue that is interesting, because it's sort of like, oh, well, we know bad things are going to happen, we don't have context for it. So it'd be cool to get context as the movie goes forward, but that's just personal critique. Overall, I did really enjoy this movie. I did. I mean, I think, especially when it gets manic stuff of the second act, and the sort of villain's backstory and logic, and it gets insane, it gets a bit late night with Devil in terms of what the villain wants. And it goes really off the rails because they finally commit to it. It's one of the things I liked about Paranormal Activity. Is like, it took a while to figure out what the villain's backstory was. When you did, it was like, oh, it's crazy, I want this. And this movie doesn't commit entirely to it. I'm not going to go into specifics, but the villain's backstory is more outlandish than usual ones, because usually the red-faced man, as far as I know, is just sort of like, oh, Darth Maul was like, I just want to haunt this family and possess them. And it's a very small-scale plan. And this one is a bit more, like, apocalyptic, I suppose you can say, which is interesting, because it's sort of like, well, that's cool. Why don't we see where that goes? And granted, they don't necessarily commit entirely to it, but they do enough where you're like, oh man, like, this is actually an intriguing idea and the evolution of the franchise, because Gemma is not only a traveller, she's a carrier, which sounds terrible, but so she can bring things from the further to our reality and vice versa, which is a cool idea. It's sort of reminiscent of the Dream Child stuff from Nightmare on Elm Street, which is something which they never explored brilliantly in those movies because of budgetary constraints, but Insidious does have super high budget, but that's more of a budget for doing crazy shit like that. So yeah, I think this, you could say this was a soft reboot of the Insidious franchise, a requel, where it's sort of like, okay, now we've done that story, we're going to move forward, but it is a different story of different characters. Well, some different characters, there's some same characters who show up and do their normal sort of mad stuff. But, I mean, overall, I did enjoy it. It's a good horror movie. It's effective. There's a few genuine jump scares. The mother-daughter relationship is kind of undeveloped. It's kind of sweet. The fact that the boyfriend character isn't even slightly portrayed as a threat is kind of interesting. No real conflict there, but, and the creepy old people trope is in full force with the creepy old people across the street. It's kind of a few legal law cop things which don't really make any sense, but it's a pretty good movie overall, and there's enough elements to the franchise added that are interesting and fascinating and cool. And also, the villain Cyrus is really creepy, which doesn't really happen in horror movies very often. Going back to the last DC movie with Clem, there's disgusting character, but there's no real threat from character. In this movie there is, and it's a good, effective villain, and I don't think that character will come back, but it does lead to the opportunity of doing more characters from further, and more people went there, and maybe I go to I mean, I would assume that this movie was longer originally and been cut down a fair bit, but yeah, very good movie. From first watch I go for 4. I don't think necessarily it'll be a 4 on second watch, so it's quite effective, and I do recommend go see it if you like Insidious movies.
DCU, I guess it's DCU, series of content created by James Gunn, who lots of people don't like online, or not created, adapted, showrun, whatever, by James Gunn, and people don't seem to care for him particularly, but whatever. As we found out in the poor box office of last movie that that DC released, the pretty good movie, I thought, the Cars or a Woman of Tomorrow adaptation. Pretty good, not as good as the actual comic, but pretty good. Unfortunately, ran foul of people who didn't really want it to succeed, and also wasn't inspired people to go so much see it. But that's fine, because Lanterns is not a movie, it's a TV show. TV show very much like True Detectives, but with superheroes. And if you heard that 1,001 times and thought, well, that can't possibly be true, well, if you actually watch the show, it's pretty accurate. It's a very, very good episode. Just a basic review. Very good episode. Good sort of uses of time. Good uses of the device they've got going, which very much like True Detectives, where it's sort of like a crime that happened in the past affects a crime in present, and they jump back between two time frames. Now, we're just going to jump to it here and go, probably going to annoy a lot of people that what happens to Hal Jordan's episode, namely the end of the episode. It seems like he's dead, people. He's dead. But is he dead? Well, probably. I mean, he doesn't have the ring, and it's set in 2026, and he's not announced for any future DC properties. But also, this episode 1 of a 8 to 10 episode TV show, so who knows what happened from there. But it's quite an effective cliffhanger. Well, it's sort of a cliffhanger. We get Jon Stewart with the beard. He's off the age 10 years. I'm not really a huge fan of the beard. It looks kind of crap, but maybe it'll grow on me as it goes forward. They tend to do this a lot of TV where you want to differentiate characters between the past and present, when it's like you just have 2026p on the screen. We know it's the modern day. We don't need like a wig or anything like that, or de-aging. I don't leave here nor there. No, what I like most about this episode is it's tense, but also it's different. And I think this might be one of the things we all find going forward, is that DC TV shows tend to be better than movies. Because Peacemaker is the best thing that's come out of this property. This might be the best thing. I mean, this is a really, really good first episode, dealing with a really intriguing story and really cool plot and dynamics of characters. I mean, Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan have such a fascinating contrast between them, but also dueling timelines. So it seems like this could really go somewhere interesting. Is it going to go somewhere interesting? I don't know. It might possibly be a bit convoluted as it goes forward, but so many episodes very good, and it's also very foul-mouthed, which maybe DC stuff which sees is a bit more like that. I know people love Superman, and I do too, but again, best thing from DCU so far is Peacemaker, and it's absolutely foul-mouthed, but also it's not afraid to have characters be a bit weathered and a bit beat down. I think one of the only issues I found with the last DC movie which came out was they didn't really want to commit to making Kara Zor-El really weathered and beat down by life. They sort of hint at it. Whereas this show with Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, they really, really make you think like these are normal people who have superpowers. And I know No one from House of L is particularly normal, but I mean, Superman was good because he's a bit more relatable, so who knows. It is a lot better than Green Lantern movie, which I'm defending Green Lantern movie to an extent, but my favourite part about this show is very much the idea of giving Hal Jordan all of this backstory, because all of Hal Jordan's most interesting stories happened a long time after he got the ring, and this show seems to really be grasping with that and go like, Hal's the most interesting when he's been doing this for ages, and he's a bit worn down, and he's been torchbearer for so long. And maybe Jon Stewart is a bit more interesting in his younger version, because in modern day he knows what he's doing in 2026, which is obviously version we'll get in Superman Man tomorrow and going forward from there. But there's something interesting about Jon Stewart as a younger man who's bantering Hal Jordan. We get a few other cool bits. We get Sheriff, we get dynamic with her husband, and this is one of the things I find works best for this particular show. All characters seem very well defined very quickly, so you get a lot of information about them, but they seem like they existed before this show, and they might exist after this show, which is good, because normally you get a lot of thing writing and stuff this in sort of DC or even superhero shows. Like Marvel had a lot of this, where it's very surface level writing, and this is to an extent surface level, but it's also a bit sharper than that. The effects are good. I love the way the ring works, where it can create stuff that's got pure physical form, but then it can be destroyed with ease or turned apart from physical form by lanterns, like Hal Jordan or Jon Stewart. Also really like the fact they're not going, we're going to spend a year or 10 episodes getting Jon Stewart up to the point where he can use the powers. No, he can. He can just use them. That's it. Like, that's one of the things I like about Gunn is he's not afraid to bypass that origin bullshit and just go, no, the most interesting part is when they have powers and what they do with them. I don't think this is A+ territory yet, but I really, really enjoyed this episode. I thought the scene, particularly with the Wayland, the guy who we all know is going to be an alien, is a really tense scene and really creative way to sort of have that confrontation where it's sort of like Hal knows where he is and he needs to get this information out of him, but he's also bluffing to an extent, and I think that's probably the best scene for the entire episode. I really want to know where this is going. I will definitely be watching weekly and keeping up reviews on it. And I just hope the DCU's success, because it seems like they're doing interesting stuff. And compared to Marvel and their Doomsday nonsense they're doing, this is a breath of fresh air. So I'm going to go with a B+ this episode. Very good, very entertaining, intrigued where it's going. A few bits here and there need to be ironed out. I'm sure they will be. But ultimately, this sort of show really does depend on Mystery having good resolution, and we won't know that to the end. But for now, B+. Good episode. Hey, just as I haven't actually watched Lanterns episode 2 yet, so I'm saving up for later on, here is my what's on TV, what am I watching thing that's not Lanterns. Well, at the moment I'm watching a couple of things. One's Stuart Fails to Save the Universe. I've watched up to episode 5, and it's a pretty good show. It's a very weird spin-off of Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon and George and Mandy's first marriage. It's quite strange because it's definitely more sci-fi, more bizarre, more abstract, but I kind of like it. I kind of think it's kind of sweet in a way. It's kind of quirky and weird, and also something different. It's not a sitcom per se. It's more of a Quantum Leap style sci-fi show just set in that universe. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, I think the fact that it's kind of meandering, I suppose, at points, but it's charming enough and it's got some good performances. So I'm optimistic for where it's going in future, although I don't really know where that is, and I don't know if it has life for multiple seasons, but the idea of going to different universe every week does have some merit, I suppose. The other thing I'm watching is Cape Fear, which is absolutely incredible. It's on Apple TV. I'm far behind definitely is. I've only watched I've watched the first 3 episodes, but it is great and very, very uncomfortable to watch and very, very tense and very, very disturbing. Like, it plays on the perception people have of Amy Adams. I know she's done dark performances. Most people know her for a bubbly, light performances. And here she's playing a staggeringly unlikable human being with a horrible family, as Patrick Wilson's also doing. And then we've got Javier Bardem, who we know played one of the most chilling villains in history of cinema in No Country for Old Men, but usually he's quite animated too, and here he's playing someone there's something distinctly wrong with that person, but he's trying to do better. It goes against the sort of previous adaptations where Matt Cage is flat out bad guy. There's a bit of ambiguity there. I mean, he's still weird and still warped, and he's still clearly capable of maliciousness, and there's still clearly some dark history he has with Amy Adams' character, but they're passing that out bit by bit. But it's a really good series, and it's on Apple TV, so I can't wait to finish it, because it's the first time in ages I've watched something and thought I'm genuinely unnerved by this. So it's really, really good. So I definitely recommend that. Other stuff, I mean, it's mostly those two. I got to go back through my Apple TV stuff at some point. So I was watching Silo and really enjoyed it, but stopped for whatever reason. Got to finish Bad Sisters Season 2. It's loads of stuff on Apple TV. Sugar apparently is really, really, really good. I haven't got back to Monarch Legacy of Monsters. So yeah, there's lots of cool stuff coming out. And it'll be interesting to see how Cape Fear continues. I'll keep you guys posted on that. Anyway, that's my What's On section. Time for Lanterns. It's really, really good. Oh my God, guys, it's so good. I love this show. I love this universe. I think my favourite part so far about Lanterns is like it's a mix of reverence and also like the idea that how Jordan has literally lived this entire life off screen for adventures and stuff and interacting with Sinestro and Guardians and just being Green Lantern for decades, because I think it's one of the things that movies can't necessarily replicate. I mean, Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, for example, Bruce Wayne's only Batman for like 2 years and then stopped being Batman for ages and then was Batman for a few weeks, because cinema can't necessarily replicate. I mean, sometimes it can, like Iron Man, for example, and things like that, but you still don't really get that sense of this person's been doing it for decades and has seen everything, and then when they see something terrifying, like how we're seeing here, he's just sort of like, my God, I've never... It's just the vibes... and also the sort of creation myth that's spread up around him. Sort of like, my God, you must have seen everything. Like, it's a bit like when Rey meets Han Solo in The Force Awakens. And it's like, you can't all be true. And so like, no, it's all true. And it's even to the extent where it's a bit like Ethan Hunt Mission Impossible, where characters go like, it can't all be true. And you know it's true. They've had a proper run. And also opens up the opportunity for lots of flashbacks, which is really cool. But essentially, the vibe of this episode is really underscoring how terrifying Hal is of the implications of what's going on, especially when he hears the word Manhunter and is forced to go and see Sinestro again. And whoever they've cast as Sinestro is perfection. The voice, the mannerisms, to the extent where I was watching, I went, fuck yeah! Because that's so cool. I mean, I'm a Green Lantern fan. I've wanted to see... We had the movie with Mark Strong and Ryan Reynolds, which was pretty good, but it's like the origins of their dynamic. But to really get the really interesting stuff off, they've known each other for decades. They've had falling out. Sinestro tried to organise a coup over Guardians. And in this continuity, it actually took out one of the Guardians, which is like, oh my God, that's crazy. And it's so awesome. But also... there's so much like that we don't know. I love get flashbacks on. So this is like my ideal sort of episode for something like this. And the John Stewart stuff is equally good because we're really getting to learn his psyche and how he's been incredibly damaged over the years by his terrible father and the mental and I'm going to say physical abuse, because I think shooting at wall above your son's head to teach him not be afraid is really messed up, and it's really sort of internalized John to quite a large extent. Now, on to the specifics of the episode. So we get John is attacked by a group led by a man named Anton, who I'm going to presume is this universe's destination for Atrocitus. Maybe we'll pick that name up later on, because the way he talks about manhunters and what they did to his people really does sum up the whole vibe of Yismael from comic books and the history of Red Lanterns and his people and losing his family, and it just fit. I mean, Guy even has a Atrocitus vibe to him, although he's a bit nicer at the moment. Maybe when his rage becomes overpowering, he'll get a Red Lantern ring. They have changed things up quite a bit with Manhunters by making them more shapeshifters, but then again, they're robots, adaptable robots. So why wouldn't they be able to adapt to any society to blend in to fulfill their mission? It does underscore the first episode, like, it made Wayland seem like a bad guy, and I know Red Lanterns are morally ambiguous, but if he's one of those guys, then, it wasn't necessarily against the level, although him self-destructing does point to sort of moral loss of factors, I would say. One thing I did mention in my other review of Lanterns, which was actually caught last week on my YouTube channel, and then I started putting this podcast, was the Macons are very, very, very much giving off the vibe of like with the Han family from comic books, which being interesting. Black Hand is an awful human being, but he's one of my favourite villains in comic books. I love Blackest Night, and the opportunity to get any vibe of that would be cool, although James Gunn has said that he's not bringing anyone back from dead in this universe. If you're dead, you're dead. So probably won't go down that route. But I also love mainly just how great it's going to be when Guy Gardner shows up on this show, because he's so antithesis. He's the antithesis of Hal in John in every single way. And the idea that he's this guy who's just sort of like, hey, I just want to hit a kaiju with a baseball bat. It's just and waste my rings power. It's such a brilliant contrast. And I think that's one of the things I do like about James Gunn's universe. These characters all feel different. All superheroes feel different to each other, and they feel unique and interesting. It's not all just, hey, we're the same guy with slightly different colour of paint. It's no, there's actual distinct personalities. That goes back to that. I know he's been cancelled now for right reasons, but it goes back to that Joss Whedon quote about Firefly, where he said you could have these 9 characters in a room, no action, just talking, and it would fill up an entire TV show episode. And I think that's very true here, because I could watch Jon Stewart's Green Lantern and Guy Gardner's just interact for hours. Not hours, but like an hour special or something. I think my only downside of the episode is there's no carry on from where the last episode ended in regards to future flashback, but future flash forward even, but future scene. Future flash forward, it's already in future, it's not really flash forward. Anyway, so there's no real continuity regarding that, but in some ways that's good, because this feels more like an actual TV show rather than we've got a 2-hour movie which we're going to split into 8 parts. So you don't necessarily need it's not indication of shows quite or anything like that. You don't necessarily need to follow on from that, but I do feel like a lot of questions were raised, and it would be nice to go back to it relatively soon. But all in all, I really like this episode, and I love the implication that John is able to make living life. That's insane. Like, to actually make a living bird and then to like demake it at the end of the episode was not an example of John. I like the fact that they're not trying to make him too Boy Scoutish, because creating a bird using weird power and then killing it is really messed up, but he does seem quite damaged in general. So, and I love tension between him and Hal, which does have some hints and indications of racial overtones. Now, whether they're true or not, John sees it that way, and that is something it'd be nice for the show to explore later on, because he's calling Hal Sir, Hal's calling him Junior, so there seems to be a lot of aggressiveness between both of them, and it'll be really interesting to see how that develops, because as Sinestro points out at the end of the episode, Jon Stewart is a bigger threat to Hal Jordan than Manhunters, because Jon Stewart specifically is being raised to be Hal's successor. But what happens when Guardians just say, okay, he's trained enough, we're making the switch? It's going to lead to a very uncomfortable scene. So, and I do have to give props, especially Kelly MacDonald, the sheriff. She is fantastic in the show. She's a good actress in general, but she's really good here. And the hint that we got about her backstory, I came here to Gotham. I came from Gotham to this ranchy town, rush through on the whim. It's all like, oh my God, we going to get Flash return Gotham? We going to get some hints about Batman? Who knows? But this episode's really good. I'd give it an A minus. And that's it for this week's podcast. Thank you for listening. If you listened, leave a like, subscribe, do what you gotta do. This will be on my YouTube channel. DeathBoy66 probably towards the end of the week, probably on Friday, I guess. But until then, have fun, enjoy, stay safe, and tune in next week. Next week's going to be a special episode because it's going to be me doing my coverage of the AEW All In weekend, because I'll be in London all weekend to watch wrestling. I'll be watching Rev Pro's 14th anniversary on Saturday, and I'll be watching AEW on Sundays, so I'll try and consolidate all of that into a podcast which go up on Tuesday. It's not going to be not necessarily a normal thing to cover wrestling on an ongoing basis, but that week it will. And what I'll do is I'll do Lanterns as a bonus episode, probably on Thursday, I guess. So, yep, you'll get Lanterns next Thursday as a bonus episode. And cool. Anyway, until next time, remember, keep it frosty.